The Prime Minister of the Bahamas is saying that his country's in the midst of an historic tragedy, with Hurricane Dorian continuing to wreak havoc, while millions of Americans are also being told to leave as the storm bears down on the mainland. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah is sending a message to Israel following Sunday's escalation on the Israel-Lebanon border, saying, "We no longer have red lines. This is the start of a new phase. Remember this date." And reports are coming in that Iran is blocking officials from the International Atomic Energy Agency from entering a nuclear warehouse, which was first identified by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. We begin with the devastation from Hurricane Dorian, and at least 5 people are already confirmed dead in the Bahamas after making landfall as a Category 5 storm, but has since been downgraded to a Category 4. The Prime Minister there, Hubert Minnis, is saying that his country is in the midst of an historic tragedy. Now, Dorian remains in the Bahamas at this hour, not moving, but with sustained winds of around 140 miles per hour, destroying homes and leaving an absolute trail of destruction. Now, in the United States, millions of Americans are being evacuated with fears the storm, which is one of the biggest in decades, will make landfall in Florida. Our senior national correspondent Michael Shaw is there and filed this report.
It doesn't feel exactly like a hurricane here in St. Augustine, Florida. It's not meant to yet. As a matter of fact, Florida, which was bracing for the worst this afternoon, has learned that this entire Dorian storm system may miss part of them. But that doesn't stop the people here in St. Augustine and other parts of Florida from putting down protection against this storm. You see not just homeowners, but storefronts as well, like this over here, where you see sandbags covering some of these doors in front of places of business, people going about their business. But for the moment, everyone is watching the tracker for this storm, and that tracker has this storm hitting Florida perhaps as early as Monday, perhaps as late as Tuesday, perhaps not at all. Right now, the state of Virginia, even to the north, is in the track of this storm. So everybody here is just kind of waiting to see what their next move should be, including this news crew, trying to see where the best part of Florida would be to cover this, or whether entirely a different idea here would be to go north with the storm. But for now, Florida is bracing, and we will follow this storm. Michael Shore, I-24 News in St. Augustine, Florida.
To Southern California now, and 8 people are dead and 26 others are missing after a boat which was moored off the shore of Santa Cruz Island caught fire, sinking the vessel. Now, it's understood that when the blaze broke out, passengers were sleeping in the lower part of the ship and may have been overcome by fumes or trapped below deck. Now, the Coast Guard is currently scouring the area, searching for survivors, although rescue divers say the ship is upside down at a depth of around 60 feet under the waterline. Those who managed to get off made it to a nearby fishing boat, waking up the captain, Bob, and his wife, who were sleeping on board.
I opened the door and I can see the fire out there, and it had actually, the entire boat was engulfed. Like, it was from the bow to the stern and 30-foot flames. It was just terrible. It was just completely lit up. I mean, there was not a place on the boat where it wasn't on fire.
Moving now to Iran, with reports coming in from the Washington Post that the Islamic Republic is blocking officials from the International Atomic Energy Agency from entering a nuclear warehouse, which was first identified by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the publication says that unidentified diplomats told journalists there that a UN investigation is being hindered as Tehran is refusing to cooperate with inspectors, saying, quote, "Ongoing interactions between the agency and Iran relating to Iran's implementation of its safeguards agreement and additional protocol require full and timely cooperation by Iran." Last year, Netanyahu revealed the location during a speech at the United Nations, calling it a secret atomic warehouse. Now to Sunday's escalation on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, and Israeli media is reporting that this video released by Al-Manan television late on Monday shows the moment that 5 Israeli soldiers came worryingly close to being directly hit as their vehicle drove along an unprotected road. Now, these reports are in stark contrast to what the Israeli military has come out to say, stating that the vehicle was actually empty at the time. Now, the launch happened as the IDF told troops to avoid being on the roads with fears that they may be targeted by Hezbollah if they were in clear sight. Now, the IDF has not yet responded to these fresh claims. And for more on this story, let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Emily Rose. Emily, thanks for joining me this morning. Let's talk about this situation. If it is indeed true that there were troops inside this vehicle, and if it indeed had been hit, what sort of a different outcome do you believe we would have seen? Yes,
Sarah, I believe we would have seen a drastically different outcome. And one issue that I spoke about last week with former military personnel along that border when we were reporting there from the border was that some kind of an action that would bring Lebanon and Israel into a further escalation, a full-scale war, could be either targeting Israeli soldiers, that could be kidnapping, or any kinds of attacks that would lead to mass casualties of Israeli soldiers or civilians, and that would have been one of the triggers. So yes, a drastically different outcome could have come out of this event.
And Emily, tell me, why are we hearing such different reports? One hand that the car was empty, but the IDF, of course, saying it was empty, and they're saying it was full. Can we expect the IDF to now come out and refute these reports we're hearing?
Yes, it looks like there's conflicting reports. Hebrew media is saying that indeed the vehicle was carrying a medical team that was driving along that border about 3.5 miles from the border, so not exactly on the front lines, but within range of the Coronet missile. And if we remember, not too many months ago on Israel's southern front, on the Gaza border, a similar incident occurred whereby an empty bus was targeted. Only one soldier was wounded in that attack, but had it been minutes earlier, it could, again, the results could have been catastrophic because that bus would have been full of soldiers. And it looks as though the Israeli military was tuning that protocol to ensure that those vehicles would not drive within range of those projectiles. Now it looks as though Hebrew media is also reporting that there will be an investigation into this incident to see why it was that those soldiers were driving so close to the border and why they were told not to, but were doing so regardless. And perhaps these media reports will also sort of trigger some kind of a response from the Israeli military.
And we have heard Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah come out with some fighting words overnight directed, of course, at Israel. Do you believe he's trying to sort of save face here after Sunday's escalation? And tell me, how can we expect this to play out for him, and especially for his popularity in Lebanon?
Yes, Sarah, a speech laden with conditional phrases, as is generally par for the course with Hassan Nasrallah. Several threats. If Israel does this, then Hezbollah will respond with this. Let's listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
We told Israel that we do not have any red lines anymore because you tried to change the rules of engagement. We do not have any red lines anymore.
So as you can see there, Hassan Nasrallah trying to exude force, but perhaps try to close up this round of fighting and try to show his people that he's strong.
Certainly. Emily Rose, as always, thank you. Now to the crumbling 2015 nuclear accord, and an Iranian delegation is currently in Paris working with French officials to try and find a way to keep it intact. Iran is demanding that the remaining signatories of the pact, with France being one of them, do all they can to lift crippling sanctions on the Islamic Republic and its leaders imposed by Washington after it walked out of the deal last year. It's understood a bailout package is being worked on, which reportedly includes $15 billion worth of funding, and if handed over to Tehran, it must then adhere to the rest of the 2015 deal after straying from it bit by bit since the US withdrew. And we're going out for a short break, but when we come back, as Israelis get set to go to the polls once again, there are reports coming in that Trump may be trying to help Netanyahu. All of that, plenty more. Stay with us.
Our world is moving so fast. The internet, social media, blogger spin, and opinion. Where do you turn for the real story? The latest information, expert analysis, and a fresh perspective on the trending news of the day. I'm Derek Dennis. Give me 30 minutes. Take 30. Only on I-24 News.
Israel's election day is fast approaching. And for the first time in history, voters head to the polls for a second time within 1 year to choose a prime minister. Netanyahu could not get it done in the spring. Will this time be different, or will the country have a new leader? One-time political partners are now bitter rivals. We have exclusive polls and live field reporting on this historic day, only on I-24 News, in partnership with Yisrael Hayom.
Politics, economics, business, and technology. Get the real news and the real insight about what's happening around the world. Michelle McCory breaks down the top stories of the day from the Middle East to the U.S. Weeknights beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Strictly Security, your weekly look into security, intelligence, and strategic affairs. Our team brings the latest on the major international conflicts, analysis of the major security issues right here in the Middle East and around the globe. Join us for a close look at innovative military technology and get up to speed with what's happening in cyberspace. Saturdays, only on I-24 News.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's go now to Israeli politics. And just days out from the general elections here in Israel, slated for September 17, there have reportedly been intensive talks between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and close aides of US President Donald Trump, with reports that Trump is set to grant Netanyahu a political gift to help him secure victory at the polls. Now, Trump and Netanyahu have shared a close bond since Trump's been in power, with many saying that Washington may be set to help Netanyahu with a mutual defence pact strengthening the US's commitment to Israeli security. This, though, is being seen as controversial in itself, which could then take power away from Israel to act independently when needed. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is stoking more controversy here in Israel after speaking to Israel's Channel 12 News over the weekend, slamming Israeli leader Netanyahu. The freshman lawmaker telling reporters that just like we have the ability to criticise our president without being anti-American, I believe we can criticise the policies and the decisions that the administration over there is pursuing without being against a country overall. Now, Netanyahu is yet to respond, but it's not the first time Ocasio-Cortez has caused controversy, saying back in April that the US should cut aid to Israel over its policies. Let's take a little listen to a bit more of what she has to say.
I think that the Netanyahu administration has been pursuing a lot of extraordinarily concerning policies, and it's to conflate an individual leader or ego with being against the entire country, I think is a hallmark behavior of folks like our president, and they can no longer use this allegation of anti-Semitism to defend their unjust and inhumane policies that hurt all people.
And let's go now to another developing story. And Israeli Channel 13 has aired a recording of the Prime Minister showing him allegedly trying to manipulate the telecommunications market. Now, this recording is believed to be from late 2017, with Netanyahu yelling at the then communications minister over news licensing agreements. And for more, let's bring in our diplomatic correspondent, Ellie Hockenberg. Ellie, thank you for joining me. We are seeing Netanyahu yet again fighting off more criticism in the eye of a real storm here.
Well, to a certain extent, Sarah, there's no doubt that we don't get to see much instances when Netanyahu is somewhat losing his temper. But at the end of the day, or the bottom line of this story, yes, it's the first time we're hearing Netanyahu in his own voice trying to intervene in the media market, but it's nothing that he hadn't said in public before. He's saying, all I wanted to do, all I am doing, is trying to open up the media market that is dubbed by right-wing lawmakers as leftist, to try and open it up to more views, more voices from the right side of the political map as well. So the public eye in this respect, Netanyahu again is following behind closed doors what he's been saying publicly. On the legal level, we're already hearing some left-wing lawmakers saying that they are calling on the Attorney General to launch an investigation into the matter. But again, I think that at the end of the day, we're facing yet another situation of preaching to the choir. Those who are anti-Netanyahu say, well, there's more proof that he needs to be toppled, and those who are supporting him saying nothing wrong, even a good thing that he's doing what he's doing.
Now, Nelly, this, of course, is not the first time we've seen clashes between Israeli media and the Prime Minister, is it?
Correct. Only last week, Sarah, Netanyahu somewhat upped his game when it comes to his battle against, again, what is dubbed among right-wing circles as the leftist media, calling on Israelis to boycott Israel's Channel 12 over a series of publications against Netanyahu and a series that he claims is anti-Semitic. Let's take a look at the next report with all the details.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Prime Minister once again is taking on the media. Against the backdrop of his fight against Israel's Keshet 12 news company for revealing transcripts from the 3 corruption cases he is facing, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on Israelis to boycott the media outlet.
I am not surprised that Keshet falsely smears the image of Israel, as I am used to Keshet smearing me every day. The series, Our Boys, devotes a few minutes of cold archive footage to the 3 boys. Immediately thereafter, and throughout the series, the entire plot detaches itself from the shocking murder story and focuses on one case, the murder of an Arab boy in Jerusalem, a shocking but rare one of its kind. This is a leftist, lying Soviet Bolshevik media outlet.
The series, a co-production by Keshet and HBO, illustrates the events leading up to the 2014 Operation Protective Edge, when 3 Israeli teenage boys were kidnapped and murdered by Palestinian terrorists. After that, a Palestinian boy was kidnapped and murdered as well. The series was the focus of much criticism in Israel over a, quote, tilted factual narrative. Netanyahu, who has long been claiming the media is out to get him, connected the dots and relaunched an anti-media campaign, dubbing the Keshet 12 outlet fake news, calling on Israelis not to watch it and declaring that the channel's heads are instructing their journalists to take aim at him. The answer is in the ballot, said Netanyahu. Head out and vote Likud. And this, perhaps, is the story in a nutshell. For many Likud party supporters and other right-wingers, the so-called leftist media is a far greater enemy than any political party. And for the greater public, the focus has shifted from the corruption cases into the credibility of journalists. And as Election Day nears, Netanyahu has no intention of abandoning a tried and trusted strategy.
Diplomatic correspondent Ellie Hockenberg, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Let's go now to the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson's held an emergency cabinet meeting with reports coming out of the UK suggesting an election may be on the cards. Now, Johnson speaking outside 10 Downing Street on Monday night, urging MPs not to vote for another pointless delay to Brexit.
I want everybody to know there are no circumstances in which I will ask Brussels to delay. We're leaving on the 31st of October, no ifs or buts. We will not accept any attempt to go back on our promises or scrub that referendum. I don't want an election. You don't want an election. Let's get on with the people's agenda.
Now to German local elections, where the far-right Alternative for Germany party's doubled its vote share in the eastern state of Brandenburg. But it's still not enough to oust the ruling coalitions there. Polina Garayev and Yotam Konfino have this story.
Guten Morgen. A cautious sigh of relief was heard across Germany Sunday evening, as initial results in 2 regional elections showed the populist Alternative for Germany become the second strongest party in both states, but falling short of making history as the first far-right group to win an election in Germany since World War II. Earlier polls suggested that the AfD might finish first in the former East German state of Brandenburg, but in the end, the Social Democrats that ran the state since 1990 still managed to come out on top by less than 3%. In Saxony, a far-right stronghold in East Germany, Angela Merkel's Conservative Party remained the largest party, but saw its share of the voters shrink while the AfD's share increased by nearly 18% compared to the 2014 elections.
We made it. It is a message sent tonight by Saxony. A large majority wants something positive. The happy Saxony has won. Thank you all.
I think we need to open people's eyes even more and show them that the established parties don't act in Germany's interest, but against it. We tried to make this clear in the election campaign. Apparently not enough. But with our opposition work, we'll show that there is a better alternative.
And the Greens, who previously struggled to meet the electoral threshold in the former East, now doubled their share by being perceived as the alternative to both the far right and to the established parties. Although voters in Brandenburg and Saxony only account for around 10% of Germany's total population, these elections were viewed as a major test to Merkel's fragile grand coalition. Failing to overtake the AfD in either state could have meant new elections, which now seem averted, at least in the immediate future, but result in nonetheless a blow to the right and the left. Local party leaders will now likely struggle to form a regional government, as none are willing to sit with the AfD.
Now, making religious life relatable to international audiences is no easy task, but Israeli writer and director Eliran Malka has chosen an unorthodox approach to show the inner workings of the ultra-religious world with his breakaway hit comedy Shabab Nikum and the feature film Unorthodox, about a political party that started out of necessity in the early 80s and still has power today. I24's Emily Francis has more.
It's the comedy about a group of ultra-religious yeshiva students who have an unorthodox way of seeing the world. The Israeli TV show Shababnikim, which is Hebrew slang for religious youth who stretch the limits of appropriate behavior, has been a runaway hit. And the show turned these non-religious real-life actors into heartthrobs, all thanks to the creative storytelling of writer and creator Eliran Malka.
I think that everyone that make a film wanted to be shown on screen for as much viewers as they can, to see how they react. What I thought is funny, it's maybe funny for them and maybe not. They can understand something else.
And now Malka's debut feature film, The Unorthodox, has been nominated for 14 Ophir Awards, Israel's version of the Oscars, which will be presented later this month. The film addresses the prejudicial cultural divide between Sephardic Jews who came to Israel from North Africa and the Middle East and Ashkenazi Jews of European heritage. The film is inspired by the true story of a small Sephardic religious community in the early 80s who formed the Shas political party, which is currently Israel's third largest party in parliament.
Innocence in the political tragedy, because it starts with a innocent character that as she succeeds in the political field, she is thrown away from it. And I think this model repeats himself in a lot of other political parties.
Right.
The one that starts, it's not always the one that keeps when it's succeeding.
הייתי בן 47 וחצי, החלטתי שאף אחד לא יגיד לי יותר שאני לא שייך.
In Jerusalem, Emily Francis, I24 News.
Now to sports, and two-time US Open champion Rafael Nadal has made yet another career landmark with a 40th Grand Slam quarterfinal. Nadal battling past another former champion in Flushing Meadows, beating Marin Cilic of Croatia 6-3, 3-6, 6-1, 6-2. Nadal will next face Argentine Diego Schwartzman for a place in the semis, with Nadal leading Schwartzman 7-love in their head-to-head meetings. With world #1 Novak Djokovic retiring during his fourth-round match on Monday, Nadal and 20-time Grand Slam winner Roger Federer are now within a pair of wins each of finally clashing on the sport's biggest stage at Arthur Ashe Stadium in what would complete the set of Grand Slam finals between the sport's most enduring rivals. Also present at the stadium was golfing legend Tiger Woods, who was cheering for the Spanish champion. And that is all we have time for. Thanks for watching.